Youth sports can be really hard, especially if you're wanting to raise your kids in ways that produce healthy adults when they're done playing. Each week on Healthy Sports Parents, we have conversations designed to help you keep your athlete mentally and emotionally healthy. Whether you're just starting out in rec ball or you're traveling every weekend to elite tournaments, we're here to help you strengthen your relationship with your kids through sports. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Corona, and I'm the host of the show. Today, we are joined by North Carolina Tar Heel assistant baseball coach Scott Jackson. Coach Jackson has been coaching at the Division I level since the year 2000, including 8 years as a Division I head coach. Before we get to the conversation today, I am going to invite you, if you enjoy the show, please rate us and review us wherever you get podcasts. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, writing up a small review will be a huge help for us. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe and that like button. Now, with all of that out of the way, here's our conversation with Coach Jackson. Coach Jackson, thanks for being here. Go ahead and say hey to everybody real quick.
Hey, guys. Appreciate your time, Jonathan. Looking forward to chatting a little bit.
Hey, so I didn't tell you, we were just talking before we started recording. I didn't tell you this, but I did grow up a Carolina fan. So the fact that you're back at Carolina is fun. But earlier this year, we were cleaning out my dad's house. He passed away a few years ago, so we're cleaning out to sell it. And I found my Carolina starter jacket.
Nice.
From 1998.
Nice.
Like the old Ram logo and all
Yeah.
that. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing this right now. But I had to show you that before we got into here.
No, I had my starter jacket too. Mine was Orioles and my brother's was the Dodgers. So that was Cal Ripken and Eddie Murray. I'll never forget wearing those every day to school. That was what you did back then.
I woke up. This was back when I forget the name of the channel, but it was channel 18 on my cable. They would replay the Orioles games every morning.
Oh, really?
So I would go to sleep watching Braves games on TBS, and then I would wake up and watch the replay of the Orioles game before I went to school that morning. So
that's awesome. That
was
awesome.
fun.
Yeah, that was my childhood, man. The Orioles and the Redskins, and I'm now the Commanders. I'm holding true to them to this day.
You got a good year going this year for
These have been pretty good days so far this year. So we'll see, man. We'll see.
Hey, before we get to coach, I want to meet Dad, and I want to introduce people to Dad. So can you tell me a little about your kids, what they play, and what it's like being just not being coach for a little bit, but being dad to some athletes?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you asking that. Obviously, I think, anytime we get a chance to talk about our families, it's a fun thing, and you get to do it with pride. And I'm no exception. My boys, I'm so proud of both of them. One's a senior, he's 18. And the other's a freshman, and he's 15. So the oldest is a golfer and a basketball player, mostly basketball. And then my youngest is baseball and football, a little bit of basketball. But they're awesome kids, and obviously we're all biased and have the parent goggles on. But I love watching them compete, and obviously they've had a front row seat to a lot of college athletics events. So they've had a really good lens to view competition from, and I like to think they take it out there with them and they do it in a mature way. Sometimes it doesn't go their way, but I think they've handled their careers very well up to this point.
So one of the things that I found really interesting when I was rereading your bio, I've known who you were for about 10 years now, and I forgot that your wife was also a Division I athlete.
Yeah.
And you played Division I as well. So Not even before you get to coach, you two are elite athletes in your own right.
Well, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
How do you take the competitor you are, both as athlete and coach, and your wife is as athlete, and parent your kids from rec league where they started and they're just out hanging out with their friends to now like high school competition? Like, how do you set aside your competitiveness to be mom and dad to them in the best way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, you're obviously, wired that way. You get into it. I know I probably crossed that bridge very early in my parenting, and watching them as you start to get ultra competitive and there's some emotion there, and maybe some things start to come out of your mouth that you've got to check down on, because you want to see your kids succeed. And, fortunately for Sarah and I, we had a chance to keep playing, beyond high school. But it's their career and it's their experience. And, that's there's so many life lessons, that just go with playing sports at a young age and learning how to fail and learning how to handle success and, being coachable and, all those things that go with it. I think my wife and I, we haven't really talked about it, but I know I had that moment. I think it was flag football when they were younger where you start to want to say something, but, you let them have their experience. And if they want to talk about it, they can talk about it. I think that's one thing my wife and I have done is not really taken it to them. They've just kind of let them bring it to us if they've got something they want to talk about with their game or their coach or anything that's related to athletics.
So that part is really interesting because I read a study one time. I don't remember who it was from. I wish I could. But it said that they interviewed a bunch of Division I athletes and asked them what was the worst part of growing up playing a sport. And the overwhelming response, number one response, was the car ride home. That was the worst part about growing up was the car ride home with their parents. So you mentioned you guys allowed the boys to come to you. So what's that like in terms of like letting them lead those conversations, to have to like kind of stuff it down inside yourself when you want to tell them, but
yeah,
how do you walk that line?
Well, you nailed it right there. You kind of have to just stuff it inside and not let it be something that comes out right after the game, right? I mean, I know how I handled losing, and I know how my wife handled losing, and you get very quiet. You don't want to talk to anybody. You're upset. And so sometimes the best thing in a car ride is silence or just to let them process it. I think that's all one thing we all have to do as athletes and coaches is when you lose, you have to process it. And, the NCAA calls it that cool down period after a game before you have media and stuff like that. And I think that's a good thing. But, unless it was an attitude problem or lack of effort or something that was really controllable and maybe a non-negotiable for us with our kids as far as how they were going to compete or play sports. We just didn't. I try not to really say much. I'm not perfect, but I've always, especially from the baseball side of it, you can imagine, there's some things that I'd probably want to say immediately after the game, but I think we've done a pretty good job of that, of letting the kids just talk if they want to talk. And then if there's really something you want to talk about, I've learned just to wait until the next day or wait until the next time we go hit in the cages or the next time we go take ground balls. Like, hey, man, you remember this back, on Tuesday in your game? Hey, I want to talk to you about that. And they're in such a different frame of mind to be able to, hopefully it be constructive instead of reactive.
Yeah, that's really good. You mentioned you guys had non-negotiables for how they play. What are some of those in your family, and how did you guys develop those?
Well, I think we took our experiences and we told our kids the number one thing was your commitment to it. So that was non-negotiable. You decided you were going to play. You were going to be part of that team. You were going to be at every practice. You were going to be at every event. You were going to be at every team meeting. Obviously every game. The only, there's been a couple circumstances where, our kids have missed something, due to a family event or, I've been fortunate to be in the NCAA tournament and the kids want to come watch that. So, that was non-negotiable, number one. Then, number two would be how you respect your coaches and your teammates and how you treat them, how you interact with them, how you build relationships with them and respect them. And then, just last is how you're going to play the game. You're going to have effort. You're going to have hustle. You're going to stay positive. All the things that I think I would want in a player at that age. I just try to ask my kids, if it ever feels like it's not fun or you're not excited to go or it's not something you want to give a whole lot of effort toward, then we won't continue to play the next year, but you're going to finish out that season and roll with it. And fortunately, we've had really good experiences. There's my oldest son had a terrible travel baseball experience. And so that kind of pushed him away, I think, from the game. But that's okay. He kind of gravitated towards basketball. Other than that, my kids have had wonderful coaches and wonderful experiences that they've, been able to have up to this point in their careers, no matter what sport.
when your son stopped playing baseball, you're the
Mm-hmm.
baseball guy.
Mm-hmm.
How did that feel? Because obviously, like, the dream is for your kid to do the thing you love the most.
Yeah.
And he walked away, and you seem okay with it now.
Yep.
But when he came to you and said, "Dad, I don't think I want to play baseball anymore,"
Yeah.
what was that like? Because I imagine a lot of people listening to this, they have the sport they love, and they
Mm-hmm.
really want their kid to play it. But a friend of ours, she was a college softball player at Carolina, and her daughter played a season of softball and absolutely hated it. She said it killed her,
Mm-hmm.
but her daughter gravitated to soccer and loved soccer. So while it killed her, she didn't want to play softball. She loved watching her play soccer. So what was that like in the Jackson household?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of saw it coming, so it wasn't really a huge, I wasn't crushed. I wasn't, let down. I don't know. I didn't really have any of the emotions except more of a transparency or a relief with him. Like, hey, buddy, if you don't want to play baseball, and I think I was probably a little more proactive with it than
Okay.
some parents. Like, hey, if you don't want to play, I don't want you to feel like you have to play because I'm a baseball coach.
Right.
And I knew what his experience had been like. I know that there was some practice moments that he didn't really care for. The personality of baseball kind of being very repetitious and maybe some standing around in some practices, it just didn't match up,
Yeah.
with him. And so he wanted that action, and you could tell basketball was something that he was just really gravitating towards. And I wanted him to run, towards basketball, not run away from baseball. And so, we had that conversation. He said he wasn't going to play, and I was like, okay, great. Go pour yourself into basketball. And I think that's really made a difference for him because he's gotten pretty good at it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Both of your kids are multi-sport athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys have had to balance the tensions between sports.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work for you all when they were overlapping? And so this is kind of a dad question and a coach question, because one of the things I've been asked is, especially as a baseball coach for you, travel season goes into July, and youth football season starts in July as well. And so those two youth coaches are beating heads against each other. So how do you balance the overlap, the constant go, go, go? Like, obviously you need to rest at some point, but what did that look like for you all?
Yeah, that's like the hot topic, I think, right now for us coming off of this past fall in our family. So our situation was it all kind of came to a head. Like you said, I had never experienced it before. My son, or at this level, I should say, my son had been on the middle school, and then the JV was something that he was getting ready, we thought, to be playing this coming football season. So you would be able to play your travel ball stuff on the weekends, and the football games were on Monday. And he came to me and said that he thought he was going to play on the varsity, which I kind of cringed a little bit because we had already booked flights and got hotels. And so sure enough, he's the varsity quarterback now. And so we've had some Friday nights where he played this past fall and then had to be on an airplane at 6:30 the next morning to honor his commitment, with his travel team, which was a challenge for him, but something that I wanted him to be able to experience. Like, hey, if you want to do both of these, this is how it's going to feel, because your body feels a little different on Saturday morning than it did on Tuesday morning, with the difference in, JV and varsity with a football game. So that was really challenging for my wife. Good grief. I don't know how she managed all of that. She's the rock star in all of this, is, getting kids to and from games and, being able to travel with them. He actually played a 7:00 game on a Friday in Lynchburg, got on the plane and had to drive to Raleigh and get on a plane the next morning, to fly to Atlanta for his tournament. So I think those experiences are great. My wife probably didn't think it was great, but hey, if this is what you say you're going to, you want to do, then this is how it's going to look. I would venture to guess if things go well down here in North Carolina and he's able to play, varsity football again as a sophomore, I don't know how the fall baseball is going to look. We'll have to juggle that, and obviously you're going to upset some coaches with that. But it's part of your career, and you get to make decisions and live with the consequences.
So putting coach hat on in that situation, let's put you at the high school level just because that's probably what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If an athlete came up to you and said, hey, like, I'm doing both of these, how do I balance it? And they actually asked your opinion in terms of school and travel and baseball workouts for the school in the fall with football. Obviously, that's a little different because most coaches understand that. But if a player came to you and asked about that, how would you counsel them?
Well, I think you would start with just the baseline diet and sleep, and how does that look? Are you going to be able to allow your body to recover enough to be able to handle all that? And then talk about the family situation. Is your family going to be able to make it work financially? Are they going to be able to make it work travel wise? And really help those kids think through the demand that it is. I mean, it is a huge demand on your time. You don't really have any free time, right? Because you're practicing football all week long, and then your weekends are taken up with travel ball. So, there's time, there's money, there's demand, there's, recovery that your body has to be able to experience for you to be good on both ends. And I would just say, if you feel like you can handle that, if you can be good on both ends, meaning the football side and the baseball side, then hey, challenge yourself. Let's go for it. But if you're going to shortchange yourself and be mediocre in football and mediocre in baseball, is it really worth? Are you really giving your team and your coaches and your teammates what they deserve? And I think that's a juggling act that you have to really take a step back and look at. I think it's a joke that people think you have to play one or the other, and if you're going to play baseball in college, there's no way you can take the fall off and just be a quarterback on the football team. I think that's a bunch of baloney at 15 years old. My son just turned 15. He's the starting varsity quarterback. He's had the best experience you could ever imagine for a defending state championship team. And I can't imagine taking, if I were to say, hey, you need to pick one or the other, that's completely unfair, completely unfair.
So one of the questions I do want to ask the coaches we talk to on here is, when do kids start specializing? Like, let me back up. How many of your current players at Carolina were multi-sport athletes?
Well, our Friday night starter to start the year last year, Folger Boaz, was a quarterback up in Surrey County.
10 minutes for me.
Yeah,
our big rival.
Yeah, unbelievable athlete. He played football all the way through high school. He's a draft eligible sophomore. He's represented by Scott Boris. I don't think it affected him. I don't think it affected him too negatively. Jason DeCaro was a basketball player. He was a freshman that came in here at 17 years old and was in our rotation. There's so many of them that have played multiple sports. I don't think, the beginning of your question, when to specialize, I don't really know the answer to that. I'll go through it with my son and maybe he has to make a decision, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see, what the good Lord, does and what lies ahead. But I think the NCAA has done a really good thing where you're not allowed to have any, recruiting conversations with college coaches until that August 1st before your junior year. And I think you'll know, and our industry is really good, right? We'll be able to tell you if you're getting interest or you've got interest from other schools at that point in your athletic career. If you've got, ACC Power Four schools calling you on August the 1st as a baseball player, then that tells you, you probably got a pretty good situation there. And the same thing goes, I don't know the football rules, but I think basketball is pretty similar as well. So I think it's a good thing. So if you put a gun to my head and say, hey, when would you have to specialize? I think it would be going into that junior year. You may have to make a decision. But if I was a football player, even if I wasn't a star player, there's something about those Friday nights, man, where you get to put on that football uniform and you get to go and enjoy it. And I don't think there's anything like it. I can't. That's the best thing about football, man, is there's no travel football. There's no, that's your season and your community gets to come out and support you. It's the biggest crowd you're going to play in front of up to that point in your career. And if you told me I needed to give that away, I would balk at that. I think it's a great experience for kids at that age.
Yeah, I was telling you before we started talking, I'm the PA announcer for my local high school baseball team, and we've got a senior this year who was going to play JUCO ball, and his sophomore year was probably second best pitcher on the team. And that year he had stopped playing other sports and had a rough year off the field. Just too much free time, getting in with the wrong crowd. And his junior year, he went back to football. And junior and senior has not played much on the actual field. His younger brother's probably a better football player than he is, but he's a part of the team. He's going to practice, so he's using his body in different ways, and he doesn't have the free time. So for him, specializing in baseball was actually detrimental because he ended up having too much free time. He ended up using his body in the same way too much. And so he was breaking down a little bit, and going back to football and having that different type of workout for 4 or 5 months has actually helped him become a stronger baseball player in the winter and the summer.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. And I think the competing in other ways is something that is, I mean, it helps you so much as an athlete to be able to, there's a mentality in football, right, that you can't play baseball with. I think there's an energy that comes with a basketball game that, our game doesn't have, right? Because it's a pitch, and then we all take, 10 to 15 seconds, and then we pitch, and then basketball is not like that. And so I think to experience all that as an athlete and to be able to compete, not to mention the failure part, right? I mean, there's nothing harder than your kid losing a tough game and you have to get in the car with them and just like you want to give them a hug, or you just want to, and sometimes I just sit there and I don't say a word and I just want to let him process it, because that's life, man. Like, and it's not always going to go your way. And the more you can experience that around different people, around different teams, and it's not just that same group of guys where you always know how they're going to react, whether it's good or bad, that you've played with all the way through your 8U travel season. It's a different group of people, and so I don't know. That's something that you just can't put a value on that, and you can't get that if you're specialized in one sport. That's my opinion.
You mentioned 8U travel, so I want to go back to when your kids were younger.
Yeah.
Everyone has different opinions on when you go from rec to travel and your situation. Like, I live in a really small town, so our little league, our recreation soccer, like, we don't have a lot of kids in it because we don't have the people. So travel, if you want to play even just a decent team, it makes sense to some. But there comes a point in every kid's athletic journey where they go from, I just want to play with my friends, to I want to get better.
Yep.
Let's go back. Well, first off, with each of your sons, where did that point come? Were they always the super competitor kid of athletes that wanted to get better, or was there a point where they just wanted to play with their friends and then it clicked finally and they wanted to get better?
Yeah, so I think I've got one from the baseball lens, and this is just the baseball part of it. My oldest he wanted to enjoy being with his buddies and have fun, and just go play baseball and compete when the game started. And the practice part, he would rather just have fun.
That's my daughter.
Yep. And just, I don't want to say goof off, but just have that positive fun.
It was energy. A social interaction around athletics.
Correct. And that was probably how he attacked the baseball part of it, because his personality, again, if there was downtime in practice, he was going to be talking, or he wanted to talk to his buddies or cut up with his buddies during the downtime and during baseball practice. My youngest now is probably, this is my wife, her words, obsessed with baseball, to the point where, everything matters. He would have, if he practiced with his brother, he probably would have judged his brother as somebody that didn't care, if he was on his team, like, man, but now you put my oldest in a basketball type setting, which fits his personality more, then it is ultimate ultra competitive. And so I think my youngest probably flipped that switch around. I don't know that he ever did, man. He's just always had that, with baseball. And then my oldest, I think once he realized how good he was at basketball, or how good he could be, that was his avenue to jump in and say, okay, I'm taking this to another level as far as what I want out of my basketball experience. Because I think every athlete has to make that decision, just like he did with baseball. Like, what do I want out of my time and my experience, and go for it, or, just walk away from it.
So my 9-year-old daughter's soccer team, we had to start a team playing in the Winston-Salem League because we didn't have all girls stuff here. We don't have the numbers. And so we did that about a year ago. And this past season, her team started getting pretty competitive. The parents and some of the girls wanted to be more competitive, and it's still a rec league team. So my daughter's like, I just signed up for an hour a week to play soccer with my friends, and they're adding an extra practice. And so she's struggling with that. So this spring, we're probably going to go to a different team with some girls that we go to church with. And the difference is, like, they have, during practice, they have the Swifty Cup. Well, they will sing Taylor Swift lyrics while doing toe touches and other things in soccer. So they're doing the skills, but it's the social aspect of it. And what we've talked with, I sat with her one day, like, she was crying after practice because a coach had said some things to her that she didn't like. And so we're working through that. And I'm like, Liv, like, I think you really like playing soccer. She's like, yeah, I do. I was like, but I don't think you care that if you get any better or that you're not the best team. Right. No, I don't. Like, I think you just want to get out there and play soccer with your friends. She's like, yeah, Daddy, that's really all I want. Yeah. Meanwhile, my son, who's a year younger than her, I coached him this past year, and he hated coming out of the game. Yeah. Like, he's the one that will ask me to go over to the field to kick soccer balls around. And so we're having to, like, I love watching my daughter play soccer, and she enjoys it. I think one of the hardest parts about our sports culture right now is the run to competition and the run to competitive teams, where we've kind of lost the beauty of rec league. Yeah. Of just going out and playing a sport with your friends. Yeah. And I don't know how we get that part back. I remember middle school, I didn't make the middle school basketball team, but I still went and played rec basketball that year. And so it was just us playing with our friends. But now, if you're not on a competitive team at 9 years old, it's almost like you're looked down upon.
Yeah, I know. As you've sat there and talked about that and brought up some really good points, I can't help but think back to my kids' experience in Lynchburg Little League, right there in town, when I was at Liberty, and how much fun that was for them, because you had exactly what you just described. You had my two kids that were probably over the top competitive and trying to win every game at a level that other kids, they just wanted that. They wanted to show up and have fun and not necessarily worry about getting better, but just to enjoy, playing a baseball game and probably going to get ice cream after the game. Like
hot dog and French fries from the concession stand, man. They're so good.
Like every kid should experience that growing up, in my opinion, regardless of their talent level. Is they should be able to go to the ball field. They should be able to have fun. If they gravitate towards it, or the game just sucks them right in and it's something they love for the rest of their life, great. But if they meet some other people and they make some new friends, and they get to have grandma and grandpa come bring their lawn chairs and watch it, and then go get a hot dog after the game or whatever, like that should be part of everybody's childhood. I'm sorry. That's just me as a baseball coach, but
it's me as a parent. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's awesome. But my point was that my kids loved that, man. They had two great coaches. COVID, they let the 13-year-olds play one more year of 12U. So my kids got to be on the same team.
Oh, that's fun.
They won the championship. I mean, it was my wife and I joke about it. It was the best experience that we had growing up, and it was $100 for each kid. Not, $3,000 for travel baseball. It was just, it's one of those things that, to your point, I mean, there's a place for everybody if they want to be there and they want to make a commitment to a team, regardless of what their goals are down the road.
Yeah. I coached my son's team this past year, and I'm really big on the idea that youth sports are not about winning. Like before puberty, the athletes, like whoever's the biggest kid's going to win. That's just the way it is. Right. And so, I teach really big working, like the whole Carolina way, play hard, play smart, play together, that whole Coach Smith thing from way back when. Yep. And so, but at the end of the season, we had a one-day tournament. And my team, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I've got a rec league 10U trophy on my desk. Nice. And I don't care about 10U rec league winning, but to watch those kids and what it meant to them to learn all season and compete. We had kids who had played one season before. We had kids who loved it. And Like, I think as parents, we forget that sometimes it's about the kids just having a good time.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And, it's, I don't really know what the word is. It's frustrating. Maybe it's, heartbreaking, I think, when you see, parents that are so demanding of their kids and to try to, I think, control that experience a little bit. You know, I look back on ours and, thankfully we let them kind of just carve their own path. I mean, right. That's a microcosm of life, whatever, can they be cut? Can somebody tell them they're not good enough? Can somebody tell them, they didn't make the national team? Like, those things are great for kids. I mean, and we want to protect our kids from that. And that's a no-no, in my opinion, is to let them fail and let them go through that and let them have to maybe prove somebody wrong, or let the game kind of spit them out a little bit. Like, you know what? You're just not good enough. And that's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's other things in life, but sometimes we need to hear that. Sometimes we need to take our hands off the kids and let them, just create their own path. And God's got plans for us that, are way bigger than ours. And so why should we try to get in the way of that as parents and control the outcomes for kids that, I think that's something you have to have as a young player, is to go through some adversity in order to create a little character that's going to last you the rest of your life.
That's really good. Last question before I get you out of here, because I know you got a bunch going on.
Yep.
Put yourself in the shoes of the parent listening to this who has no clue what they're doing. They didn't come from a sports background like you do. Their kids love it, and they're just trying to keep up and do the best for them. What encouragement would you give that parent today to go through whatever they're going through right now as they try to parent their athlete in a healthy way?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. It's a loaded question, but I'll try to be brief with it. But if your kid loves it and they want to pursue it, why are they pursuing it? I would say that. Are they pursuing it because of a pure love of the game? Are they pursuing it because they want to be around other athletes? Why are they pursuing it? And then support them within reason, right? I think there is a reason. When I say reason, I mean don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't jump into the travel scene too soon. Let that love for the game, just let it be something that is just continuing to build all the way up to maybe, 10 or 11 years old. And then maybe you have, something, hey, we're going to challenge ourselves a little bit. We're going to step outside of our hometown and try to compete on a national scene. But I think the more you bite off, the earlier you bite it off, you put your kids in a situation where they're looking at it from a different lens. It's all about, rankings and being on the right travel team and being on the best travel team. And, there's gotta be a love for the sport that's fostered, or you and I both know it's not going to continue to last. And then, one thing I'm really adamant about that Sarah and I did was we never went to practice. We never went to our kids' practice and hovered over the practice and watched every rep. And, I just think that that's the kids' time with the coach. And then we're going to show up on game day and we'll celebrate game day. Everybody can celebrate together, but I'm dropping you off at practice and you're going to go to your practice on your own without us watching. And that is your time with your teammates and your coaches. And you do whatever you want to do with it. You can go get after it and have fun. You can go, be lazy in practice. You can go just be social hour with your buddies, whatever that looks like. That's your time. And it'll show up on game day. If you're ready to play or you're good enough to play or you keep getting better, maybe you've made the right decisions in your practice time. So that would be some of the best advice I think I could give parents based off my experience. Everybody's different. At the end of the day, how lucky are we to have healthy kids that can go out and compete and we can enjoy watching them, win and lose games. I think that's a really cool thing that I know I take for granted.
That's so great. Thanks so much, Coach. Appreciate you.
All right, Jonathan, take care.
Awesome. That's it for this week of Healthy Sports Parents. If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave us a rating and a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, writing up a small review will go a really, really long way to helping us get the word out. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe and that like button. You can follow along on all the socials, on Threads, on TikTok, on Instagram, at Healthy Sports Parents. You'll get the show clips. You'll get some other stuff throughout the week as well. But most of all, we hope that you have a great time supporting your kids this week, whether you're in season, whether you're out of season. Enjoy practice, enjoy games, just enjoy the time you get with your kids this week. We hope you have a great week, and we will see you soon.